Fashion is clothes. It touches the lives of 8 billion people directly. It shapes how you feel and how the world feels about you. I'm Priyanka. I'm a kid of this industry and I grew up in it. And I started Fashion Intelligence to bring you the people who deeply understand fashion, the builders, the manufacturers, the brands, the artisans, and the craftsmen. Today, I'm with Bret Schnitker and Emily Lane. Bret has been inside over 1,000 factories across 70 countries. Emily built Clothing Coulture, one of the most respected fashion podcasts, now heard in 57 countries. Together, they run Stars Design Group, 67 factories, 14 countries, thousands of styles a year. So, Bret, after 30 years inside this industry, has fashion actually gotten better at making a real person feel great in what they wear?
Yeah, I would say the fashion industry tries, and each brand is kind of unique. The real successful brands understand within their demographic how to make their particular clientele feel great. That's what makes a brand successful. I think there are some that certainly fall short, but it's an ongoing craft. It's not something that's tied down to science. It's tied down to aesthetic, emotion, and the individual customer.
That's true. But at the same time, this gap has become a $1 trillion gap between the garment that exists in your size versus the garment that will make you look and feel better. So, from the production side, why has nobody closed this gap?
Well, you sort of are talking three separate questions. So when you talk about the first part, you're talking about garment exists in your size. So that sits really pretty firmly with the tech team. They're the ones responsible for creating a particular spec or specification and in a particular style. And so if they understand their customer demographic, they're going to be creating specifications to suit that particular demographic. When you're talking about making you feel great, there are a lot of silhouette and style attributes that can make different body types and different customers feel great. And so those are kind of sit in the designer category. That's the front end of the spectrum that usually resides in the brand or the retailer. The production side typically is the executor. They're the ones that, given those parameters, are required to execute the product to the level that the front end, who's communicating with the customer, is relaying to the back end.
So I understand then there is a designers group and then there is a back-end production group where at times there seems to be a gap between the designs that's been made and then the final sizes that's being produced across different factories. Perhaps, Emily, now you have talked about this Ozempic-driven backslide in body diversity on runways. Even when brands get inclusive sizing right, the shopping experience still frustrates. So what do you think is broken and who should fix it? Whether it's the designer side or then the back-end production side?
At every layer, it's important. And thinking about the Ozempic trend and the influence that it's had in fashion, it's more than just the brands responding to having uber thin runway models. I mean, they're responding to what they're seeing in culture. So much of fashion is around interpreting what the designers interpreting what they're seeing happen in culture. So Ozempic and the rise of those drugs resulted in celebrities showing up everywhere. Surprise, we're 30, 40, 50 pounds smaller than we previously were. So culturally, there's been a demand for fashion to suit this new aesthetic. I think on that side of it, there is a bit of a responsibility on the brand side to say, look, this isn't really a healthy conversation. If somebody needs to lose weight to be healthy and better, that makes perfect sense. I don't think that brands should be driven by a trend that inherently makes people feel less valuable because they don't fit into that particular uber thin aesthetic. When we're talking about the retail experience and how that relates to people feeling better about themselves, it surprises me how often retailers are making poor decisions about what that experience feels like, from the time that you enter the store to the time that you're in a fitting room trying on a garment. Harsh lighting, all of those things translate to a poor experience and then reflects into how somebody feels about themselves. So there's so many decisions all along the way through designing product that looks good on a wide variety of people to, making sure that you're being inclusive in your designs from a sizing standpoint. And then, of course, making sure that a retailer is creating a wonderful experience when somebody enters that store so that they feel good about what they're trying on.
And it's not a new challenge.
No.
It is a societal experience. In the late 1500s to early 1600s, Elizabethan fit was the rage. And that meant you had a you had a very, very narrow waist, you had exaggerated hips. That didn't exist in real life. So women would tie themselves up in really tight corsets. They would put on big hoops to exaggerate a waist. It's been going on forever. And fashion tries to manage aesthetic plus real world interaction. And that's always kind of that challenge that we deal with. What we see on the runway, to Emily's point, is not necessarily what we see in real life, but people are always influenced in that.
Yeah. And I believe now more so than ever, given the amount of influence these artificial aesthetics is having, especially on young girls who aspire to look a certain way, not really understanding the optics behind everything that's going on the runway, that is a glamorous side, and that's not certainly or necessarily a reality of the world.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question, that is, if you could redesign how people discover whether a garment actually works for them and not just fits but also flatters them or builds confidence, then what would that look like?
That's an interesting question. I think the key word is discover, right? So, discovery comes from our perceptive abilities, what things look like, what they smell like, what they taste like, etc. That all comes with experience. And I think what's interesting today that I see that you've brought up a little bit is the surrounding experience that a customer has in some retail locations. Remember, still we do 85% of our business in this industry in brick and mortar. And when you walk into a atmosphere that is inviting, has the right light and the right mood, and the designer's done a good job of creating a great garment, and they can try that on, they can try different sizes on, that's going to help them feel a little bit better about that experience. I think, it's tougher when you get online and people are recognizing that in light of the harsh light of online reality, that's becoming a bigger challenge. How do you embrace sort of that aesthetic portion? Because we're all, we talk about models on the runway and all of these people that are taking Ozempic and why that influences this kind of altered perception of reality. The reality behind all that is that we're all insecure. Skinny people want to have curves, curvy people don't want to. People with curly hair want to have straight hair, people with straight hair want to have curly hair. We're never satisfied. So the insecurity factor in fashion has always been a challenge. And so how do you address that? Models feel insecure, We talk to models all the time and they're always insecure about themselves. So if what we consider perfection on a runway, the individual feels insecure, think about the challenge for people in the reality where we're all flawed. And so I would tell you it's a very unique experience. It's a unique experience that the successful brands understand and curate to their demographic. But boy, that's the trillion-dollar question, as you mentioned, is how do we engage across platforms?
I think there are a couple of decisions that could be made that make a big difference. Things like choosing your fabrication wisely. Like let's make garments with fabrics that feel really good on a body. There have been brands that have come into scrutiny in the past because, oops, it's too transparent. Being very thoughtful about your decisions in fabric can radically change how a person feels in a garment. And then making sure that those specs are right, making sure that they hit you on correctly on the rise, and decisions about even how those garments are coming together so that they're not creating unflattering looks, cutting you in the wrong place. So there's a lot of decisions within the development of the product that could be made that can certainly improve how somebody feels.
And I think with this, a very important challenge would be standardization. Say, when we look at technology, worldwide manufacturers started introducing USB port. So that really helped standardize all the electronic equipments, and you could easily connect from one device to the other because there is standardization. But till date, after centuries of evolution, still a medium at H&M is not a medium at Zara. And both of you have managed over $1 billion in retail. Is this inconsistency a solvable problem, or is it baked into how our industry fundamentally works?
Well, that's a wonderful
Such a
question. And technology is really trying to deal with this a lot. For years when we didn't have an online space, vanity fit, which is what I say in quotation marks, the industry loved that because if the actual measurement for a waist was 32 inches or 34 inches, we would make the garment at 36 inches. So when the customer walked in and tried it on, they were like, oh my God, I've lost weight. I feel wonderful. You talk about this whole emotion of how you fit and feel. The industry solved that in a brick and mortar environment by making the garments a little bit bigger. So how does a customer walk in and feel good about the garment that they're trying on? Well, you try something on and you go down a size, you feel pretty good. Like it's not reality, but they've overcome the psychology of somebody feeling better. In an online space, that vanity size has exploded into so many different areas where there's not a single brand that's running the same specification because they're all looking at different demographics. We're looking at a global economy where, holy smoke, how many shapes and sizes are there around the world, right? From a people group standpoint. And so it becomes even more challenging in a very complex environment. And therefore, standardization of fit is difficult. Now, I think accuracy and transparency of fit in a technical standpoint online solves for a great many things. I'm not sure we will ever get standardization of fit across every brand and retail around the world. But when a consumer can start to use technology in some ways about seeing how their body fits in a particular garment, and that's happening. But if the individual brands can be more transparent about fit, like our waist size in alpha size. We have obviously some garments that are presented online to a customer with a measurement. And we have some garments that are presented to customers online in alpha sizing, SML, XL, things like that. Even women's, you have a numerical, but it's really a moderated alpha size, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. It doesn't have a lot of relevance to the individual specification in the garment. But if we were to create tables and or a conversation with the consumer in technology on a specific garment in reference to their body type, and there can be a communication between them knowing their own body type and their own measurements and it relating seamlessly to a particular brand's actual specifications online, then I think you go a long way to solve this whole challenge online that isn't as much of a challenge when someone walks into brick and mortar and tries on multiple sizes.
I mean, it is still a challenge even in person because a lot of times brands are not even being consistent style to style. So this particular jean might fit this way. Meanwhile, this one fits another. So I think even just embracing consistency as a brand, like this is what our fit is going to be, can be transformative.
And that's generally being informed by the particular demographic or geography of a brand, right? Majority of their customer dictates, and there's a lot of information out there. There is Al-Anon. Janice Wong for years has run lots of measurements and lots of scans in 3D to determine body sizes and create science of fit. There's a brand new, relatively new company out there called Humanetics that's doing the same thing. So science is coming and becoming way more important as we talk about online experiences for consumers, and brands can learn from that.
It's true, because till the time we don't have that transparency and accuracy, the brands have created their own biggest demon, that is the returns. And the industry is tracking return rates and it tracks logistic cost. But then nobody's measuring the moment a woman is ordering these 3 sizes of the same dress because she's been burnt before. It's one thing is the monetary cost which the brands are facing, but then there is also a lack of confidence and trust which the consumer has on their part. So, when did these returns stop becoming a logistics problem and now have become a confidence problem for the consumer? Because it's no longer just about the loss which the brands are incurring, it's also the loss of confidence, and because of which we just have almost 15% of the sales online versus 85% still being in the offline.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. I think, brands are looking at it financially as a model. It is destroying profitability online. It's called bracketing. That's the term. When somebody buys two or three sizes and returns one, it wipes out the profitability online. Therefore, I think there's a lot of emphasis starting with the financial to fix those issues. In turn, once you kind of fix those issues with transparency and communication and consistency, I think that starts to address the real human issue about confidence level.
Yeah, they definitely go hand in hand. As Bret mentioned, it does drive down profitability in a very significant way. We've heard of a large European retailer say at one point during the World Retail Congress that for them, because of bracketing, that online is not a profit zone for them. In fact, it's a cost factor. They consider it marketing. It's because the process of getting those goods back, inspecting them, repackaging them, all of that costs money. So, that in itself is a logistical problem and a cost problem. However, what your point of it also being a confidence problem I would say, it promotes bracketing for future buying, which we know the results of that. And then it also reduces the confidence that an individual will have in a brand, the likelihood of me going back to this brand because I don't trust that they're going to give me a product that I like, that's going to fit accurately. That minimizes the potential for my return. And it's also interesting when you look at bracketing, we're assuming here that maybe they're keeping one of the garments. But statistics show that that's not even the case. Like a lot of times they're returning all of it. So, the transparency piece is critical.
And the point that you bring up, a lot of people are talking about at the last National Retail Federation conference that we were at, very interesting room. There was a whole lot of conversation about LC, lifetime customer value. And you're really talking about lifetime customer value. How do we keep that customer once we have them? What's the longevity of the customer? And that comes with confidence. And so, I definitely think that one's going to inform the other, but there's also things being pushed back because of the monetary factor that could exacerbate lifetime customer value, because what's happening with innovations in AI as it's learning the individual customers online is it's now able to select and see the customers that are bracketing. They are now using AI, looking at the customers that are consistently buying and bracketing, and they will serve up a different menu of costs to that customer versus the customer that is buying a single item and returning less. They will take a look at the individual, customer bases. And if there's someone that's bracketing a lot, they will start charging them for returns and exchanges. If there is a customer that's buying a single item and has very low return rates, she will get fed considerably more, hey, free shipping. And so they're actually, in some ways, trying to overcome the expense. But to your point, they might lose a customer because they start to charge that one customer who's a little insecure about sizing, and then she might think twice about actually going back to that brand and buying more items because now it's expensive for her.
Yeah, and I would really think twice before implementing this strategy, given that 1 out of 3 consumers today is exactly in this bracketing behavior. And more importantly, there's a study which says that 2/3 of the Gen Zs today prefer to shop offline versus online, exactly because of the sizing issue. And especially in a country like US where returns is not that easy, you will have to literally need to go to a physical outlet or say an Amazon drop point in order to return the product. For me, it becomes much more easier to just walk into a brick and mortar store and try something, but I can be more confident. I
Hence,
think
85% of our business is still done in brick and mortar. We have a lot to learn online.
Yeah. And I feel one thing is growing up in this industry, I've seen that when you really win the trust of the consumer, and again, to the point which you were enunciating before, that it's about being honest and transparent, because when you can do that you can achieve the trust of the consumer, be it offline or online. And that gets me to our next question. So both of you started from scratch, your backgrounds are fascinating, it's right from the roots, and it's directly at the retail stores. And so what did working face to face with actual customers teach you that no algorithm or data set ever could?
I can tell you for sure that our business is human interaction. There's a lot of people that are concerned that technology is going to, and I learned that today even people are feeling more isolated than ever, and they want more human connection than ever. And so when technology comes up and tries to separate people, there's this desire for people to come back and have more community. And retail is the same. In fact, it was interesting when we were at the Soho House and we had a really fascinating night about technology and its interaction with retail. There was this, I think, whole dialogue talking about how retailers and brands are having to reanalyze their cost and expense centers for the interrelation between brick and mortar and online. Traditionally, the online guys are saying, hey, our net profitability is 10 to 15%, and people are loving online shopping, and we're moving in a great direction. And the brick and mortar guys are saying, hey, things are expensive. We have a lot of human costs here, and our net profit's about 1.5 to 3% at the end of the year. So people are like, oh my God, why aren't we doing more online versus brick and mortar? Because brick and mortar isn't profitable. But what they're realizing is that the human interaction, the lifetime customer value, is being built in brick and mortar because the customer's interfacing with the brand in a real way. And some of those costs that are occurring, the human costs, the atmospheric costs, the brick and mortar costs, need to be shared on an expense line with the online portion because they're getting the benefit. And so I think there's always going to be this interrelatability, this requirement for brick and mortar, direct interface, and online. We're going to certainly see online grow, and we're seeing retail evolve, where today you're seeing not every corner there's a particular brand on every corner. They're creating flagship stores, key interface points in major cities so people can experience the brand and then learn about that brand and then go online and buy. So that's a really good decision. We're also seeing that brick and mortar retail leases are now under pressure for long-term leases because demographics and humans don't go into those same places for extended periods of time, and places get hot and places get cool in terms of where people want to go. And so pop-up experiences are becoming more and more important, even for bigger brands. So I think what we're going to see not an elimination of human interaction and brick and mortar. It's going to evolve and be more focused, because without it, online becomes more challenging.
People still want to work with people.
And you being in the industry for so long, we love to touch and feel fabrics. We love to experience them. We love to look at the detail. It's so hard to do that.
We love to build relationships.
Yeah.
I have seen firsthand that how some of our customers have been coming to us for the last 30, 40, 50 years now. And that's primarily because there is a human in the loop. And I really love the way you have put these various pieces of, it's not just about the online and the people experience, but it's also about the real estate in question and how the leasing is working in the background and various demographics and how we tie all of this together, because it's a solid ecosystem at hand. Your Go Giver episode with Bob Bragg.
Her favorite author, by the way, so she's going to answer this one.
Yes, that was Amelie's episode. So you talked about serving before selling. Now, in a world of algorithm-driven commerce, where often these AI models have the incentive of selling more, having higher commission rates, driving more sales, is that human instinct getting lost or becoming the ultimate competitive advantage? Does it still make sense to have that service attitude with these models, or is it even possible?
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this book up because, as Bret mentioned, this is one of my favorite books. And whenever we have somebody new come into the company, it's kind of like, here's your first job, read this book. And that is because it is a philosophy I deeply believe in. And I do think it has a competitive advantage. That being said, this isn't a strategy that is implemented without intention, without, it's not just a give everything away for free and eventually the good will come kind of philosophy. It should still have its own strategy behind it and intention behind it. Bob Berg will tell you that, yes, give your information away, but in the end, there still will be an opportunity for you to ask for what it is that can make it a very reciprocal relationship. So the generosity of spirit, I think, is very important. And I think it can definitely develop loyalty, help people become familiar with the value that you can bring to the table. But, choose who you're going to bring under your wing, choose who you're going to engage with that spirit.
He does talk a lot in the book about the individual in the book because it's a story. It's a wonderfully written story that, we talk about parables or things like that. When you read this book, you see that the individual that is providing this guy guidance is also setting out expectations along the way. If that individual isn't doing something in a particular way or a particular time, the relationship is over. And, Bob really talks about a lot of that is that time is precious. And in a commercial environment, when you're in business and you've got expertise, you've got to make decisions and have those conversations with individuals, understanding that you have a lot to give and you're willing to give it, but there has to be an understanding with what the return on that investment is going to be. Because every day you make decisions on who you're going to spend time with, who you're going to nurture, who you're going to, how is that going to define in your pecking order when you only have so many hours in the day, who you're going to provide that information with and develop that relationship with. And so I think that, I love that book because it's always such an interesting tightrope. In the past, I would sit down and...
Yeah, you used to give it away all the time.
I used to give it away all the time.
And you were so busy.
People would be like, what are you doing in that meeting? And I'm like, well, this person needs help. It's fascinating. I'm really involved. And I think that, Emily, being a student of Bob Berg, she would be very good with me to sit down and say, okay, look, you've got this amount, you've got responsibility for employees, you've got responsibility for yourself. Which of these people, when you're going down that effort, are you going to see from a business perspective? Because we're still in that business of this. How are you going to see that? And how are you going to monetize your time? And you're still going to give wonderful information, but how do we separate wheat from chaff? Because so many times, I would be overloaded giving information, and it would be many times disappointingly not going. Human nature, right? Yeah.
You touched upon very important factors, that is service, relationship. But that also means that if someone walks to your store and is trying on something which you understand may not really work on that consumer, a part of building relationship is to say, don't take that piece, it's not going to work for you. Instead, look at this other piece. So you are basically building that transparency and a trust relationship, whereas it's not always about your profit as a brand, but also what will actually work on the consumer in their best interest. Do you feel that technology can replicate this emotion, especially with all the AI algorithms, where the incentive is to drive more sales? Can we get that personalization back, that trust back?
Yes. I would say that AI and technology today is on its path, but in some cases doing a pretty good job of that. There's a company that we interviewed on our podcast. First season?
XGen?
XGen.
Yeah.
It was a number of episodes
early.
ago. I think we're on our 100th episode. But XGen's very unique, and there's a lot of others out there right now trying to do the same thing. But as AI and technology starts to learn a consumer's buying habits, designs, what colors they like, what particular fits and silhouettes they like, what sizing they like, what brands they like, automatically built into particular systems that offer multiple products across their spectrum on a particular website. Jen's expertise is to start to learn that customer. It's a SaaS model. It plugs in very comfortably and starts to build customer demographics. So the next time that that customer jumps on the website, it's already curating more information specifically tailored to that customer. And then customer B or Emily jumps on it as completely different looks. That website's going to look completely different to her than it is to the other person. It's not the same experience for everybody. That is the future of technology, that websites will be very personalized, and there's this whole thing about data and privacy, and we always walk that tightrope. But in a fashion environment, and you talk about all of these challenges that we're dealing with, and technology's dealing with, because we're humans and we're all broken and we all have insecurity and we all want to look good and all those things. And those are not always things you can build into algorithms, but there are things you can. And improving that shopping experience for the customer. Hey, it's me, like she laughs. I spend a lot of time on websites. I've been in the apparel business forever. And she's like, how many black t-shirts do you need? I mean, honestly. And I'm like, well, this is a Pima black and it's got this guy. And she goes, holy smoke, it's like a nuanced difference. Well, for a customer like me, jumping onto a website like that, if they're going to show me a red t-shirt, it's a waste of time, right? I'm only going to buy a black top. It's just who I am. It's my uniform. And so I think that technology, understanding particular nuances like that, can go a very long way to make people feel much better about their consumer experience. Frankly, it's happening every day with our news. So it's an easy translation for fashion.
There's so many places for technology to get information about an individual user too. Like all the social media, all these things, like there's so many ways that technology can learn about somebody. That being said, when you posed the question, you were talking about that boutique owner who really knows that individual and was like, that one might not be the best silhouette on you. That is that's emotional connection. That's authenticity that is sincere, delivered from a person to another person. And that's the kind of thing that technology, I don't think at this stage can replicate the sincerity and honesty and authenticity that a human can offer, which is why, in this creative industry, there's still going to be that human translator.
I would agree, but there's so many crazy things happening online where people are having OpenAI, ChatGPT be their psychologist. Yeah. We've got people we've got people falling in love with people they've never ever met personally. I mean, people are convincing themselves that artificial intelligence and technology is human. And I believe that's a trajectory that's not going to end. It's going to continue. And I think technology will be able to more and more replicate the human experience, and therefore it's going to blur the lines. I would agree that there's no substitution for that actual human experience, but I guarantee you technology is not giving up on that experience, and it is making some pretty interesting inroads into mimicking human relationship and emotion.
Yeah. And I being a AI startup founder, I completely agree with what you're saying. I also believe that any technology is based on what you want to make of it. Nuclear technology can be used to give electricity to millions of households, but at the same time devastate an entire human race kind from a region. Both are possible. And at the same time, I believe that a lot of these elements of building relationship and trust and saying the user, hey, this is what's going to work and what's not going to work is what even we are trying to attempt at. And let's see where that goes as a startup. But thank you for this amazing conversation. I really loved understanding at the core of it that there are so many inconsistencies this industry has developed, but technology can be a very potential solution to solve, be it at the sizing layer or relationships or building a much needed trust for the consumer. while helping them look a better version of themselves. I also loved how you connected these pieces to much beyond the fashion ecosystem that is being looking at the real estate angle of it, or looking at where we can start building demographics and trust layers across multiple regions. So this was a fascinating conversation.
And one that will not end, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank
having me on.